Dust motes danced in the single beam of light. It sliced through the attic's gloom, illuminating cobwebs and forgotten treasures. My heart pounded. Each creaking floorboard sounded like footsteps. I ventured further. The air, thick with the scent of decay, caught in my throat. What was I doing here? Right. Curiosity, a fool's guide, had led me to the dusty door in the attic. Now, with each step, it whispered of secrets best left undisturbed. I ran my hand along a shelf piled high with dusty relics. My fingers brushed against something cold, sending shivers down my spine. I pulled it out, my breath catching in my throat. A mask. Not just any mask. This one was different. It was carved from a dark, polished wood, its features etched with an unsettling realism that sent chills down my spine. The eyes, two hollow sockets, seemed to follow my every move. I found it in a dimly lit corner of the antique shop, tucked away as if hidden from prying eyes. The shop was filled with countless relics, each with its own story, but this one stood out. Its smooth, polished surface was both alluring and unsettling. It seemed to call out to me, drawing me closer with an inexplicable pull.
It's got a history, this one does. A long and dark history that many have tried to uncover.
The shopkeeper, a man with eyes as old as time, had been hesitant to part with it. His gaze was intense, as if he knew more than he was letting on. I, ever the fool for a good mystery, had ignored the prickle of unease at the back of my neck. My curiosity always got the better of me, leading me into situations I wasn't prepared for. I paid his price, the wood surprisingly cold beneath my touch. It felt almost alive, as if it had a heartbeat of its own. That night sleep wouldn't come. My mind raced with thoughts of the mask and its mysterious past. The mask resting on my bedside table seemed to pulse with an energy all its own. It was as if it was watching me, waiting for something. Its empty eyes bored into me, whispering tales of forgotten rituals and ancient pacts. I could almost hear the chants of long-gone ceremonies. I tossed and turned, haunted by the shopkeeper's words, unable to shake the feeling that I had made a grave mistake.
Some masks choose their wearer, and once chosen, they never let go.
The air grew heavy, stifling me. It felt as though the room itself was closing in on me, suffocating me with its weight. I could feel a presence, cold and unseen, watching me from the shadows. It was as if the mask had awakened something ancient and malevolent. The mask's presence was unnerving. It had an aura that sent chills down my spine. It seemed to watch me, its lifeless eyes following my every move. No matter where I went, I felt its gaze. I tried to ignore it, convinced myself it was just a trick of the light. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. But the feeling persisted, growing stronger with each passing day. The sense of being watched became almost unbearable. I caught myself talking to it as if it could understand. My words echoed in the silence, filling the void. I'd recount my day, my frustrations, my dreams. It became a strange, one-sided conversation. It was absurd, I knew, but the silence in the flat felt deafening without it. The mask had become my silent confidant. One night I woke with a start. My heart raced as I tried to make sense of the darkness around me. The room was bathed in an eerie silver light. It felt otherworldly, almost magical. I sat up, my heart pounding, and looked towards the window. The moon. Its light was unusually bright. It hung high in the sky, its light falling directly onto the mask. The mask seemed to come alive under the moon's glow. It seemed to glow from within, its features shifting and contorting in the ethereal light. I couldn't look away. I stared, mesmerized and terrified, as the shadows danced on its surface. Each movement seemed deliberate, almost sentient. It felt as if it were alive, watching, waiting. The mask had a presence that was impossible to ignore. The flat felt different now, colder. It wasn't just the mask, it was something else. A presence unseen, unheard, but undeniably there. Doors creaked open on their own, shadows flickered at the edge of my vision. Sleep offered no escape, plagued by nightmares of suffocating darkness and echoing laughter. My reflection in the mirror grew gaunt, my eyes shadowed. Friends voiced their concern, but I brushed it off. I was just tired, overworked, that's all. The mask, however, offered a strange comfort. It was as if it understood my growing fear, feeding off it. I found myself drawn to it, compelled to hold it, to trace my fingers along its cold, smooth surface. I told myself it was harmless, just an old piece of wood. But deep down, a seed of doubt had been planted. What if it wasn't the mask I should be afraid of, but what it was attracting? The whispers started subtly, almost imperceptibly at first. At first, I dismissed them as the creaking of an old building, the usual sounds of a house settling in the night. But they grew louder, more insistent, as if they were trying to convey a message I couldn't quite grasp. They snaked into my dreams, murmured my name in the dead of night, weaving themselves into the fabric of my subconscious. I could never quite make out the words, but their tone was undeniable, accusatory, malicious. It felt as though they were judging me. One night I woke to the sound of my name being whispered directly into my ear, as if someone was right beside me. I sat bolt upright, my heart racing, but the room was empty, except for the mask. It was always there, watching. It sat on my bedside table, bathed in the pale moonlight, its presence both familiar and unsettling. Its eyes seemed to gleam, and for a moment, I could have sworn I saw a flicker of movement in their depths, as if it were alive. The whispers ceased as abruptly as they had begun, leaving behind a chilling silence that was almost deafening. I lay back down, pulling the covers tight around me, but sleep wouldn't come. My mind raced with questions and fears. I was trapped in a waking nightmare, and the line between reality and delusion was beginning to blur. Every shadow seemed to move, every sound amplified. The boundary between dreams and reality eroded. The mask's influence wormed its way into my waking hours. It felt like a separate entity, whispering suggestions, urging me toward actions I couldn't explain. The man in the mirror was a stranger, his eyes hollow, a mirthless smile playing on his lips. I was losing myself, becoming something else. One dreary afternoon, compelled by an unseen force, I picked up the mask. It felt strangely warm in my hands, as if infused with a life of its own. I brought it closer to my face, mesmerized by the pull in my chest, a yearning to be whole. The whispers intensified, no longer mere murmurs but urgent commands. "Wear the mask," they hissed, their voices a chorus of shadows. "Become one with the mask." Panic welled up inside me like bile. I wanted to stop, to hurl the mask across the room and break free from its insidious hold. But I couldn't. It was as if my body was no longer my own. I felt myself being drawn in, pulled towards the mask like a puppet on invisible strings. "No," I choked out, the sound lost in the empty flat. "I won't." My hand trembled, my grip on the mask loosening. For a fleeting moment I saw a glimmer of hope. Maybe I could fight it, resist the pull, break free from its hold, but it was a losing battle. The mask was too powerful, its influence too deeply rooted. As the mask neared my face, my reflection in the mirror morphed. The man staring back at me was no longer me. His eyes burned with an unholy light, his lips curled into a cruel, knowing smirk. Terror, raw and primal, flooded my senses. This wasn't me. This thing was something else entirely. The whispers reached a fever pitch, a cacophony of voices urging me on. "Yes, become one," they hissed, their voices a chorus of shadows. "Embrace the power, embrace the darkness." The mask was almost touching my face now, its cold, smooth surface sending chills down my spine. I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing myself for the inevitable. I felt a jolt of energy surge through me as the mask settled onto my face. It was a perfect fit, molding into my features as if it had been crafted for me alone. I screamed, a sound trapped within the confines of the mask. My vision swam, a kaleidoscope of colors and grotesque shapes assaulting my senses. I thrashed against unseen bonds, but it was no use. I was trapped, imprisoned within the mask's grasp. The whispers were gone, replaced by a deafening silence that amplified the pounding of my own blood in my ears. I could feel the mask becoming a part of me, my flesh melding with its cold, unyielding wood. Panic welled up inside me, choking me, suffocating me. I had made a terrible mistake. Then, as suddenly as it began, the chaos subsided. I opened my eyes, expecting to find myself staring into the darkness of my bedroom. Instead, I saw the world through the mask's hollow eye holes. It was as if a veil had been lifted, revealing the world's true face. Colors seemed more vibrant, sounds sharper, but it was the emotions that struck me most forcefully. I could feel them swirling around me, fear, anger, despair, a potent cocktail of negativity that both intoxicated and repulsed me. I reached up, my gloved fingers tracing the contours of the mask. It was no longer cold and lifeless, but thrummed with a dark energy that resonated deep within me. A slow, predatory smile spread across my lips. I felt powerful, invincible. I had become the very thing I feared. Or had I? A flicker of my old self, buried deep beneath the mask's influence, stirred. Was escape even possible? Or was I destined to remain a prisoner within this grotesque shell, a puppet dancing to the tune of an ancient evil? For now, the mask was in control. But deep down, in the deepest recesses of my being, a spark of defiance flickered. The battle was far from over. The question was, would I be strong enough to break free before it consumed me entirely?